brand new series, Breaking the Law, where I'll be diving into the lore and theories of some of my favourite games and series. This is something I've been working on since my playthrough of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It got me thinking about the cycle of life of Final Fantasy IX, how it works and how it affects the game's universe as a whole. And with all the hype building around Final Fantasy IX Remake, I thought it was a great time to delve into this subject, breaking it down across 6 videos, discussing story, world building, and how it ties into the Buddhist cycle of rebirth, Samsara. So with that, let's dive in, starting with the cycle of rebirth in Final Fantasy IX. Final Fantasy IX's universe revolves entirely around the cycle of rebirth. Everything within said universe follows the same principle. When something dies, it is reborn. All life comes from one source, the crystal. The crystal births world crystals into being, and these world crystals then begin a cycle of rebirth all on their own. Worlds form around them, and the planet is terraformed into something that can support life. The world crystal begins to make simple life forms. These creatures live out their days until one day they die. The soul of that creature returns to the world crystal, and the memories it experienced help develop more intricate life. This goes on for millennia, advancing life and civilizations towards an endpoint, at which time the world crystal begins to end phases of its existence. Everything on that world perishes and the world crystal dies. Instead of the world crystal returning to the original crystal, it is left in the cosmos, filled with the memories of its past life, and is reborn into a new world that is given a head start in creating new life, and starting the process all over again. This is ultimately how the cycle of rebirth works, but there is a little more to it that I want to delve into, the concept of memories and souls. In Final Fantasy IX, a soul is the embodiment of a person that is born from the world crystal and returns to it when it dies, ready to be reborn to continue life on the planet. It is completely invisible to the naked eye, as when we see someone die in the game, we don't see it returning to the crystal. But there are instances where we are able to see them. One example is from the end of the game, where the party members not chosen for the final battle use their remaining energy to revitalize those who will fight Necron, which appears to be their soul, or at least part of it. Another example comes in the form of Terran souls. When we open the way to Terra, we enter what looks like a vortex. Inside are glowing lights being pulled down, which may be a representation of Terran souls that are being cycled through Gaia into its crystal. On closer inspection, these lights are actually in the form of a phoenix. In multiple mythologies of our world, including Egyptian, Persian, and Greek, the phoenix is a creature that cyclically regenerates upon its death. Some believe that it bursts into flames and is reborn from its ashes, while others state that it simply dies and is reborn once it is decomposed. Representations of the Phoenix have appeared throughout the Final Fantasy series, whether it is as a summon that deals damage and brings back KO'd characters, or more commonly, the use of its down to revive them from the same state. The symbolism associated with the Phoenix and the Terran souls is incredibly powerful. It shows the extent at which the Terrans are being revived, taking the form of the Phoenix to portray the new cycle of rebirth that they are undergoing, using a creature that is known throughout mythology as one that is reborn in its own cycle. Within the Final Fantasy IX universe, souls and the physical body are separate entities, which is how they are able to exist once the physical body has perished. We see this with the Terran souls that are being kept in stasis, as well as the soulless beings on Terra. Garland also shows this when his physical body is killed by Kuja. His spiritual form continues on. The main reason souls exist is so they can accumulate life experiences and create memories. These memories are sent back to the crystal and are processed by it in order to advance life on the world. This can take the form of new life forms, or the evolution of ones currently living on the planet, altering them slightly from what is already there. As Garland states, memories and evolution go hand in hand. Without memories returning to the world crystal, life would not be able to evolve and would cease to change from its current form. Interestingly though, Kuja is able to alter life once he enters Memoria without needing to die and return to the world crystal. He somehow warps the memories of the 4 Terran Guardians and rebirths them into being as Malareth, Tiamat, Kraken, and Lich, altering the perception of how we believe the cycle of rebirth works. A soul and its accumulation of memories are what allow an individual to attain trance, empowering them and unlocking powerful abilities unique to that soul. Even black mages are capable of trance, despite Kuja believing they are soulless puppets. However, as they are made of mist, they are still comprised of the essence of a soul. This is why Garland created Zidane as a baby, so he could grow and get his own life experiences and memories, allowing him to trance and making him more powerful than Kuja. Due to Terra's involvement, the Gaian souls have begun to change. For at least 3,000 years, Terran souls have been mixing with Gaians, resulting in many of Gaia's souls to be tainted by Terra's. In this image, the blue represents Gaian elements, whereas the red is Terran elements, showing an example of the disruption of Gaia's cycle of rebirth, which brings me on to the next subject, the Well of Souls. In history and religion, the Well of Souls has had many different stories associated with it. Located in Jerusalem, where a temple once stood, it is primarily known as the center of the world in both the Jewish and Muslim religions, where it is said to be covered by a foundation stone that contains the river of paradise or the abyss filled with raging waters of the flood, depending on the religion, both indicating this is where life began and spread out from this source. Those of the Jewish faith say it is the spot that Abraham sacrificed his son Isaac, and those in both the Muslim and Islamic faiths say it is where Muhammad ascended. It is also believed to be the location where Noah landed after the flood, allowing life to once again sprout from this source and becoming the center of the world once the waters cleared. It is also noted that when someone dies, their spirit returns to the Well of Souls, where they await the final judgment. Their voices can be heard calling from the well. The Well of Souls has appeared in a lot of different mediums over the years. We see it in Indiana Jones at the Raiders of the Lost Ark. It is also an integral part to the story of Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning, where gnome scientists are trying to bring a corpse back to life by using a magical device known as the Well of Souls, in order to defy fate itself, recycling a soul back to its body, which ultimately leads to your character coming back to life. The live stream from Final Fantasy VII is also seen as a Well of Souls within its own cycle of rebirth. When someone dies, they return to the planet and become part of the live stream, eventually leading to new life that will one day return to the planet. A similar argument could be made for Final Fantasy X. When someone dies, their soul needs to be sent to the far plane. A summoner can perform the sending and allow it to go to the far plane to stop them from becoming a fiend. The far plane is essentially the afterlife, a paradise for those that died. It is filled with fields of flowers and water. Those that enter it are able to see images of those they have lost by focusing on their memories of the deceased. The Fireflies react to these memories and create an image of the lost soul, so that the living can still see their loved ones. This could be seen as the same concept as the Well of Souls, with souls of the dead still being seen even in the afterlife. Final Fantasy IX is different due to the way that the cycle of rebirth works. We know the process of how souls are born and reborn due to the world crystal's involvement. Upon death, a soul returns to its world crystal, which is essentially the Well of Souls for each individual world, as life begins and ends with them. All souls pass through the crystal and pool inside it, waiting for their memories to be processed, before being reborn or developed into more complex life forms. However, due to the Terran's plan, Gaia's Well of Souls is completely disrupted. As Terra's crystal was dying, the Terrans began to fuse younger crystals to theirs in order to keep it going, which seemed to help stop its decline. Gaia was one of the worlds chosen for fusion, but this ended in failure, causing its destruction and wiping out life on the planet. Garland planted the Ether Tree to help life thrive on Gaia once again, and thousands of years later, he began to block the Gaian souls from returning to their world crystal in order to weaken it and cycle Terran souls through it instead. The Ether Tree absorbed the Gaian souls and broke them down, sending out mist through its roots after the refining process was complete. By going down inside the Ether Tree where the soul cage dwells, you can see a pool of liquid. This is all of Gaia's souls that are being refined. It is a literal Well of Souls. All in order for Gaia's world crystal to weaken and replace Gaian souls with Terran ones, allowing its inhabitants to awaken from their deep slumber. This creates another cycle of rebirth within Gaia, as the souls that are being absorbed by the Ether Tree are refined and released through the roots, creating mist. The mist causes anger and conflict, which in turn causes more death, forcing the Gaian souls through this disrupted cycle and into the Ether Tree's well, instead of its crystal. In comparison, Terra's Well of Souls has completely run dry. They have stopped all life forms from returning to their world crystal in order to prevent further decay. With no souls passing through it, Terra's crystal cannot process any memories to create new life, which at this point would take it closer to death. However, calling back to the warp point to Terra we talked about earlier, this very much fits the mythology surrounding the Well of Souls, as we see souls being pulled to it, and it is said that voices can be heard coming from the warp gate, which is either the genomes on the other side or the Terran soul speaking. This matches up with the voices coming from the Well of Souls in mythology. This shows how important the Well of Souls is within the cycle of rebirth of Final Fantasy IX, and how disrupting it has catastrophic consequences on both Gaia and Terra. The concept of ley lines and thin places has been around for a long time. I wanted to talk about them in this video before I go into detail about how they apply to Final Fantasy IX itself. But what exactly are ley lines and thin places? If you think about longitudinal and latitudinal lines on Earth, we could say that ley lines are similar to those. They aren't visible lines we can see, but they are theorized to be there. The difference between them is that ley lines are seen as straight lines between landmarks and buildings on historical or prehistoric sites. An antiquarian from the 1920s named Alfred Watkins argued that straight lines could be seen between multiple historical locations across ancient British settlements and landmarks, which he stated represented trade routes. If we head back further in time to the mid-1800s, the idea of sacred sites being aligned is also mentioned, stating similarities to what Alfred said, that prehistoric monuments and churches aligned with each other. This was also mentioned in the early 1900s in Germany, with lines connecting various sites, leading to the idea of religious and astronomical functions. These were known as holy lines, and were the same concept as the ley lines theory created by Alfred Watkins. Archaeologists and scientists dismissed these claims, saying that Alfred Watkins was drawing lines between sites of different time periods. This would have been impractical for trade routes over hills and mountains across the landscapes. Archaeologists demonstrated that the alignment was purely by chance, and there was no scientific evidence to support it. However, despite the evidence against Watkins' theory, it was revived by the Earth Mysteries movement in the early 1960s. This is when the elements of the stories changed, saying that ley lines carry the energy of the planet to create magnetic fields or areas that generate psychic or spiritual powers. Then there are those who believe they are associated with UFO landing sites. Some of this movement even tried to prove scientific evidence of the existence of ley lines and their purpose, using dowsing rods to find their locations that always crossed on these historical landmarks. There has never been true evidence of the energy said to be found at these locations, but it doesn't mean that there aren't focal points across the world that are said to generate a large amount of Earth's energies. Some even associate the location of ley lines with the concept of thin places. Thin places are said to be locations on Earth where the distance between heaven and Earth is much closer, allowing us to see glimpses of it or feel its presence. It is not just heaven we are able to see, but a look into the other side, into the land of the dead, seeing spirits of those who have passed on. This ties into stone tape theory as well, with certain materials capable of absorbing energy that loops back shown as apparitions. They do not need to be on sacred sites, like how ley lines are said to be connected, but most instances of thin places are, which may have been why churches were built in specific locations as they felt they were closer to heaven. The origins appear to come from Celtic beliefs and mythologies, but this idea spread out across the world with many people believing more about their existence. Final Fantasy games use the concept of ley lines and thin places a lot in their games, so I feel like it was important to talk about in this series, which will ultimately lead back into how the cycle of rebirth works. If you want to see how it works in Final Fantasy VII, then please go check out Professor Nox's video on the subject. Finally, I want to cover a subject very important to this series. The main purpose of this miniseries is to show how the different elements of Final Fantasy IX fit into the cycle of rebirth, Samsara. But what is Samsara and how does it work? In Buddhism and Hinduism, Samsara is the representation of the cycle of life, covering birth, death and rebirth of those trapped inside it. It is considered a wheel of suffering that is perpetuated by ignorance. Those that suffer will live endless lives, generating karma that places them in one of the 6 realms on the wheel. The main purpose of Samsara is to escape the wheel and attain enlightenment to reach nirvana. In Buddhist cosmology, the 6 realms of Samsara are the god, demigod, human, animal, hungry ghost, and hell realms. These realms are divided into 3 higher realms that represent good, and 3 lower realms that represent evil. However, there is a little bit more to this classification of good and evil that we'll get into once we start talking about each realm. The god, demigod, and human are the 3 higher realms, and the animal, hungry ghost, and hell are the 3 lower realms. The god realm is the realm of heavenly beings filled with all the pleasures they could ask for. Those considered gods, or devas, hold godlike powers and have the ability to live for millennia. They live a life of happiness and indulgence, with some even ruling over celestial kingdoms. Even with all the pleasures they could ask for, those that are in the god realm still suffer. Their powers blind them to the world of suffering, filling them with pride, but these gods are still able to age and die. As their end draws near, they are rejected by the other gods and begin to see glimpses of the world they may be reborn into, which is always one of the other 5 realms. Some say that because these beings have had the greatest pleasures, they also have the greatest miseries. The canopy of the Tree of Life is in this realm, allowing the gods to pick and enjoy the pleasures of its fruits. To be reborn here, you must have pride and an immense amount of good karma. The human realm is our plane of existence. It is a realm that we suffer with birth, aging, sickness, and death. Those who live in it have the capacity to be good or evil. Those in the human realm are able to achieve enlightenment to escape Samsara, but most of the beings in it are blinded and consumed by their desires, halting their chances of ever escaping. It is considered fortunate to be able to be reborn in this realm, as it gives you another chance to be able to escape. You'll be reborn here if you have a desire and capacity for good. The demigod realm is filled with powerful beings referred to as titans or Ashura. The demigods are known for their supernatural powers, but they are not as powerful as those in the god realm. They are beings that suffer with anger and jealousy and are constantly engaged in conflict, fighting with the gods and causing sickness and natural disasters in the human realm. The Tree of Life is said to grow within the demigod realm, adding to their jealous natures as the fruits fall off in the god realm. Despite their fierce and quarrelsome natures, they still have the potential to be both good and evil like humans. They are still considered one of the higher realms. It is a realm that accumulates a lot of karma due to the nature of the demigods, which will see if they move up or down when they die. Being reborn here requires jealousy associated with good karma. The animal realm is a realm that usually coexists with the human realm. It is the literal state of existence for animal beings. Animals are characterized by similar suffering to humans: birth, aging, sickness, and death. But they also suffer with cannibalism, enslavement, exploitation by humans, and limited intelligence. In some Buddhist texts, plants also appear in this realm as they have primitive consciousness. The animal realm is thought to be similar to the hellish realm because animals are driven by their instincts and impulses rather than what would be considered sentient thought. To be reborn here, you must accrue negative karma associated with ignorance. The hungry ghost realm is filled with spirits that suffer from hunger and thirst. Very little food exists in this realm, and no matter how much the spirit consumes, they cannot be quenched or satisfied. Buddhists characterize them as beings with very small mouths and large stomachs. Despite it being a realm of the hungry, it can be derived more so by excessive cravings and attachments. As they are invisible, there are traditions where people will leave food and drink out in the open so the spirits may consume it. When they have run out of bad karma, they will be reborn into one of the other realms. As such, those reborn here are associated with intense greed and negative karma. The Hell realm is the final realm of Samsara. It is the location of the damned. Those who have committed great atrocities and crimes end up here. Like those in the God realm, they live extremely long lives, but to repent for their actions in their previous life. Acts of lying, thievery, adultery, and murder will see you receive the same torture that you committed to the others. The Hell realm is often described as being split into areas of fire and ice, but there are multiple areas to it based on the amount of evil karma you accumulated. Unlike Christian beliefs where hell is the final spot of the damned, this realm of Samsara will see you reborn once your evil karma has run its course. To be reborn here, you must have lived a life of hatred and intense negative karma. Each of the realms is watched over by a different form of Buddha, often referred to as the 6 sages, allowing them to lessen the suffering of those trapped in each realm to help them to reach enlightenment no matter what realm they are currently in. Indra watches over the God realm. Shakyasima watches over the human realm. Vemasitra is the Buddha of the demigod realm. Dhruvasima oversees the animal realm. Javalamukha sees over the hungry ghost realm. And Dharamaja watches over the hell realm. This is to make sure that no realm is forgotten about, that all souls had their chance to escape the wheel of Samsara, It is just that those of the human realm have a higher chance of achieving it than those of the other 5 realms. The 6 realms of Samsara are not the only things shown inside the wheel. There are 3 other elements that are all linked to how it works. Right at the centre of the wheel are 3 beings of suffering, ones that we are said to suffer with every hour of every day until we reach Nirvana. They are the fuel of the wheel, giving it momentum to continue on. They are sometimes referred to as the 3 roots of evil, or the 3 poisons. The first is desire, represented by a cockerel. The second is hatred or jealousy in the form of a snake. And the third is ignorance that is represented by a boar. Each of these animals is holding onto the tail of the other to show the endless loop of negativity. By building up spirituality, we can gain control of these and destroy these emotions to help us lead us to Nirvana. Outside the centre circle is the circle referred to as Bardo, the state between death and rebirth. On the right side, we see souls being pulled down by the demons having let the 3 roots of evil overcome them. The other side depicts souls rising, being led upwards as if they overcame the 3 evils and the negative karma they bring. Bardo refers to the intermediate state between life and death. After a soul dies, they will enter the state of Bardo, where they will wait until their time of rebirth occurs, depending on the karma they accrued during that lifetime. Souls in this state can end up back in the same world they were in, if there is a balance of the same karma, such as a human could end up back in the human realm instead of moving to the demigod realm or hungry ghost realm. Once these souls enter their next life, they will be at the mercy of the outer ring of Samsara. On the outer edge of the wheel of Samsara sits the 12 independent factors. Each factor can be seen as a link in a chain, where the previous factor leads into the next and will continuously repeat until the soul is liberated and sent to Nirvana. This is the true reason by the endless cycle of death and rebirth, or Samsara. Each of the 12 independent factors shows specific imagery that translate to what occurs in each factor. The first factor is the state of ignorance, showing a blind man representing the spirit after death in the state of unconsciousness. The second factor is karmic impulse, shown by a potter using his wheel. The spirit moves out of its unconscious state and enters its subconscious. The third is consciousness, represented by a monkey looking through a window. This is where the faculties that allow us to perceive things slowly begins to take place. The fourth factor is name and form, shown by 2 men in a boat. This is where the 5 skandhas are created, representing our physical and mental existence. It is the basis for the suffering of Samsara. The 5 skandhas are form, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness. The 5th factor is activating senses, shown by prosperous houses. It is when the sensory organs begin to appear, such as smell, sound, touch, and so on. The 6th is the factor of contact, shown by a couple embracing. This is the state of objects coming together. Senses and consciousness are said to be seen as contact. The 7th factor is sensation, represented by someone being shot in the eye by an arrow. It is the next in line after contact as it expresses the feelings of what the soul felt, whether they are good, bad, or neutral feelings. The 8th is the factor of craving, or to want, showing a man intoxicating himself. It is where desire is created. Whether it is good or bad, it is felt as a wanting of an object. If it's seen as neutral, it is reduced to accepting the object instead. The 9th factor is the state of grasping, depicted by a person picking fruit from a tree. To grasp is the point in which the sperm and the egg create an embryo. An embryo represents a state of consciousness and the beginning of life. The 10th is the state of becoming, represented by a pregnant woman. Becoming essentially means the preparation for the different types of existence as the life enters its gestation period. The 11th represents the rebirth of life, shown by an image of a woman giving birth. The life will enter the realm it was meant to be in, due to the karma in its previous life. The 12th and final independent factor is aging and death. It is depicted by a man carrying a body to be cremated. It represents the fact that once we are born, we age and we die. And upon death, we return to Bardo, where we wait to be sent back to the first of the 12 independent factors. That is everything on the inside of the wheel, but there are actually 2 celestial beings and 1 celestial location that sit on the outside. The first is Yama, the god of death, who holds the wheel of Samsara. His job is to weigh up your karma and question you about your life, so that you know which realm you are going to be reborn into. The moon we see is the state of Nirvana, the location of where those who have been liberated from Samsara go once they have attained enlightenment. The The Buddha sits on the opposite side of the moon, pointing at it while watching over the wheel to help those inside it reach their salvation. And with that, we've come to the end of the first video. Across the next 5 videos, I'll be delving deep into the many elements of Final Fantasy IX and showing how they fit into the wheel of Samsara, talking about the story, history, and what placement they have on the wheel. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video, where I'll be talking about the celestial bodies of Final Fantasy IX.